Welcome to the Richard Dolan Show, airing live Monday nights on KGRAradio.com and now as a podcast on iTunes and wherever else you can find it. You can learn more at my member site, richarddolanmembers.com. Now, join me for a fascinating exploration of all the things you secretly want to talk about, from UFOs to government shenanigans, strange science, future tech, and more. Here on KGRA Radio, welcome to the Richard Dolan Show, where every week we fight the good fight. Greetings, it's August 13th, 2018. Happy to be here with you this evening. Lots of news this week, in particular the banning of Alex Jones and his InfoWars program on Facebook, YouTube, Apple, and Spotify simultaneously. I had lots to say about that, and you can certainly go to my YouTube channel to see my program Intelligent Disclosure, where I live stream with my wife Tracy. But aside from the dark cloud of what we can call the new censorship looming over us, that is censorship 21st century style, there's a lot more to be engaged in, and that definitely includes the field of UFO research. Lately, I've been working to cultivate interviews with researchers from around the world, trying to get a handle on what's happening in terms of both UFO encounters and the state of UFO research. I've interviewed a few researchers recently from Canada, Australia, and the United Kingdom, all English speaking. I do have plans to talk to researchers from Brazil, Germany, Ukraine, and Russia, and other places in the world. And tonight I have a fascinating researcher from Hong Kong. His name is Cheuk Fei, and he has his own radio show, MJ13, where he talks about UFOs for listeners in Chinese. Here in the English-speaking world, it seems to me that we really know next to nothing about what's going on in China. I think it's long past time that we find out. Because of the difficulty of setting up an interview with someone who's basically 12 hours off of your own time zone, Chuck and I definitely had to do this as a pre-recorded interview. Overall, the sound quality came through very well, and I think you will agree that this is an eye-opening interview, and one that's also very interesting to listen to. Before I bring Chuck, I'll remind you that if you want to follow what I am doing, you can go to a few places. First, my new website, richarddolanmembers.com, where I provide ongoing analysis of UFOs, geopolitics, false flags, and much more in the form of video, audio, and blog posts. I'm adding content to that site several times a week. It's grown rapidly. Lots to see there. Also, you see my traditional site of richarddolanpress.com, where I have books written by myself and many other very interesting authors. Definitely find me on my YouTube channel, where I'm putting up new content every week, multiple times every week, including my live stream show Intelligent Disclosure, which I mentioned a moment ago. Of course, you can always continue to find me here at KGRA Radio every week doing this show. So without any further waiting, let me bring on my guests, a fascinating pre-recorded discussion with Cheuk Fei. Welcome, Chuck, to the Richard Dolan Show. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning to you. Well, good evening to you. Good morning to me. And listeners should probably be aware that we are 12 hours apart on the time zone. So yes. It was very difficult. There's not many times that actually are convenient for Eastern United States to talk with Hong Kong.
That's right. That's right.
So we're doing this at 10 in the morning, my time, 10 in the evening, your time. And I think that's probably going to be the best way to make this work. So
that's right.
I'm glad we were able to do this. And listeners...
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
It's my pleasure, sir. Listeners should know that I just did an interview with you 24 hours ago for your radio program in Hong Kong.
That's right. Yeah, I have my own radio program is named MJ13. It had the name just to make a little jokes to the famous Majestic 12, but we named it MJ13. Easy to remember, and as also 13 is a number that easy to remember for most of the Hong Kong people. So I picked this name and talked about UFOs and unexplained and conspiracy theory stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I'm so glad to get to talk with you because for some time I've really wanted to talk with someone from China who or Hong Kong's good enough who knows enough about what's going on in that part of the world relating to UFOs. It's really difficult for an English-speaking person to get a good handle on what's happening on the other side of the world. I mean, China is so big. There's so many people. There's so much activity going on. And yet, from the Western perspective, sometimes it still feels like a different universe. It's so
Yeah.
different, right? And I think language is probably the biggest problem there. And in terms of UFOs, like everyone in the U.S. and in English-speaking countries, we all know there's a lot happening in China in terms of UFOs, and yet there's still so little that we know. And people should know, like we met a couple of times at the conference Contact in the Desert. You've gone there in California, but we really got to chat this year in 2018 at Contact in the Desert and had a really good conversation. And I learned, wow, this is a guy who's got a radio program. And as I discovered when we talked this morning for you, yesterday for me, you really have a lot of knowledge about the UFO subject. That was really nice. So,
Thank you.
yeah, may I ask you then? I'd like to ask a number of things of you. Your background and what brought you into the subject of UFOs. I'm very interested in how Hong Kong is a bit different from the rest of China. Like, for example, I'm curious about, we're doing a Skype broadcast right now, and I don't know if it would be that simple to do that from the rest of China, but you can tell me about that if you're able to. And then I would love to get some information on, some interesting Chinese UFO cases, and definitely interested in how China or Hong Kong culturally looks at the UFO subject. If we can get into all of those things, I think it would be a really nice experience. And the last thing I'll just say before I hand it over to you, I'm just glad that you and I are getting to talk to each other's audience. So you gave me an opportunity to speak to the Hong Kong audience, and so now, we're reversing the roles, and you're getting to reach a different audience here. And I think that's a good thing, that we're sharing information around the world like this.
Yeah.
So how did you get into it? What's your whole story with UFOs and your interest in this?
Well, I'm just a normal guy, normal kids, grow up in Hong Kong. My dad is he used to be a cop, and he quit the job because of the corruption those days, and he became a cab driver before I was born. My mom, funny thing is my mom she grew up in a very rich family, but after the war, the World War II, the family broke, and things carry on, and then she met my dad, and then I was born. I was born in the 70s. And I know nothing about UFO at those days, and we know nothing at all. We never even heard about it. We don't even know what's the terms of UFO is. And then I remember when I was 13, we were all living in buildings. In those days, the people were poor. We're living in the apartments, but in the small flats. And that's what Hong Kong is. Small buildings, small flats for a big family. People only share a room, so something like that. Things like pretty much like what you can see in the movies. Okay. And I was living in a building, and we like to get up to the rooftop during the dinner time, or before or after the dinner time, because not everybody can afford air condition those days. So kids likes to go up to the high roof of the building, like 13th floor of the building, so you get some cheer, get some air. the adults like to read papers, newspaper there, kids playing around.
Yeah, sure.
And I was there. I was there with my two of my sisters and my dad. Okay, all four of us get up to the building at the 13th floor. I'm gonna tell a little background about this building. It's quite famous. You may curious a Hong Kong building. How you can get it so famous, because these buildings happen in two Hollywood movies. One of the movie is the Ghost in the Shell.
Trying to remember that one.
Yeah, Ghost in the Shell. Yeah, I don't know if you remember. There's one of the building is so crowded, with a lot of small apartment, and that's also where Scarlett Johansson, fight with one of the bad guys on the water flood area. That is the building I live.
Really?
And also it appears on the other movie, which is the Transformer, but I don't remember which one. It's a Transformer fighting in the opposite side of our building, which is a mountain. It captures in the movie in Transformer.
Wow. Okay.
And we are seeing. We were staying on the top of the rooftop and focusing on the other side of the mountain, which is where the Transformer fighting area. And that was about 7 o'clock at night after dinner. And my sister were playing down there, on the ground with their toys. And I don't even remember what I was doing. My father I remember he was reading newspaper or something. And I saw something floating on the air, which is what I can explain is like a ball, like a glass ball, a ball made by glass, but in orange color, and it's growing.
So an orange ball,
Orange
very
ball.
reflective because it was like glass. Is that
Yeah,
descending?
the reason I describe it as glass is because I can see the thing inside the ball. Okay, it's
Okay.
quite a distance. It's probably about 500 feet away.
Close.
500 feet away.
That's
Close.
quite close.
It's quite
How
close.
large would you say this was? You have an idea?
I have no idea what that was, and the reason I said it's glass because I see there's something moving inside the ball. It was like, the best way to describe it is if you drink a cup of cappuccino and you stir it, and after you stir it real hard, and then it keep on stirring itself, and that's the thing you can see inside the ball, like something is stirring inside. So the color is more like an orange, but the thing inside which is stirring is you see some kind of like a dark red color, like stirring there.
Was
So
it
that's
kind
the
of
best way I can describe. Like a
interesting?
watercolor, when you stir a watercolor.
Did it have a swirling effect then when you were looking at it? Like there was motion inside it? Or am I misunderstanding?
The board itself is surrounding on the top of the mountain real slow. The board itself. But the thing inside the board itself is turning faster than the speed itself.
Okay.
The speed is pretty much like you stir a cappuccino real hard, and then you take out the stirrer, and then it keeps on moving. That kind of effect.
So what
But
else
the whole
happened?
thing, it grows itself.
So it was growing, and what happened then as you're watching this
I was
moving?
watching it, and then I walked to my father, and I pointed to my father. I asked him what it is, what that is, and he just looked at it, and he seems like he doesn't know. I look at him. He seems like he opened up his mouth and blank. He doesn't know what that was. And then I asked him again, what is it? And then he was like, I don't know. He said he doesn't know what that is, what that was. And then I was a little bit scared. That was about like already appear like already 2 minutes. It turning slowly, like about that speed, turning slowly on the other side of the mountain.
All right.
Very slowly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but it turns, and I remember the way it turns. It turns in the speed is not. Put it this way, it's not event. Okay, it's sometimes it turns faster, and sometimes it slow down a little, and then sometimes it's turn again and faster. But it makes all. I mean, the whole path is a circle.
Did you hear any noise coming out
No
of this, Cheuk?
noise, no noise at all. At all. In the middle between us is a driveway. Down there is the building, 13th floor. There's a driveway, and then the other side is a small mountain, and that happens over there. Silence, totally no sound at all.
Wow. So it got to within 500 feet of you, which is pretty close, I would say. And then how did it leave? Did it just stay there for a long time, and how did it depart?
Well, 2 minutes after we saw it, and I feel a little bit scared. So I pull my, my sister also saw it, and they both scared too. So, all three of us scared. So we want to leave. So we pull out my dad's hand. I said, we want to leave. Let's go. And my dad is kind of like, no, let's stay around because it's something so weird. You don't know what that is.
Sure.
So
I would agree with
stay
your dad.
around.
I would have wanted to stay.
Yeah, when we were kids, we don't know what that is. So, yeah, my dad is he brings me a lot of this kind of spirit. So anyway, he stayed around and we stayed around, and I think it keeps turning for about another 2 minutes. So totally it will be around 5 minutes. Before we want to go and after we want to go. So let's say 5 minutes, and then it disappears. It fly all the way to the back of the mountain, and then it fly low and disappear behind the mountain, and that's
that was it. Wow.
And that's my first sighting, and the only thing I want to add on to it is
so I'm going to get the year. So if you were 13, am I right in thinking that would be the early 80s?
Something like that. 80, 85, 83, something like that.
All right. In Hong Kong.
Yeah, it was easy to remember. It was because, and because when, the reason I remember, because we have air conditioning when I was 15 years old. And we don't have to get up to the roof anymore.
Okay.
So we don't have to get onto the roof anymore. So that's the point. That's the point I remember. And it's about a couple of years before we installed air conditioning. That's why I say it's about 13 years old.
Yeah, okay. Very interesting. So that was your initiation to UFOs. Did that spark a really very strong interest for the rest of your teen years and on? Or, and if it was, how did you learn about it? Were there a lot of UFO books in Hong Kong at that time?
Yeah, I was after the sighting, and I don't know how to explain, but always have this kind of always have these pictures of that thing floating in the air, silence, and the thing is turning inside. You don't know what that is. You don't know. You keep thinking about it. So
yeah.
And then later on, my elder brother, he likes to grab a little of the books, the translated books from Taiwan. And those days we can buy those books in Taiwan. That the publishing companies mainly focusing on like the Bermuda Triangles, alien abductions, UFO cases, and Bigfoot, that kind of books.
Is this still like the 1980s when when you were seeing these types of books?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, something like that.
Wow.
No, actually 70s,
Seriously, so
1970s.
when you were a very little kid, there were books on UFOs and
Yes,
Bigfoot and
my
things like
my
this.
my brother have those books already. I still
Okay.
remember I have two of the books. I
Wow.
have two of the books. I still have two. I keep those two.
So it's
And
interesting. This was getting into Hong Kong, even by the 70s.
70s.
Yeah.
I remember
Okay.
the publishing company's date is 1972.
Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
70s. We already can get those books. But mainly those books are for the people who make fun of, when
Yeah.
you're holding a book with UFOs and people were laughing at you. When you're holding books of like a ghost haunted house, the kind
Yeah.
of books, Bermuda Triangle, the people
Yeah.
laughing at you anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's kind of fun for kids. So my brother grabbed those books, and I think those are the earlier information I can get about UFOs, alien, and alien abduction. I remember one of the books talks about some of the abduction cases, some of the contact cases, and some of them have pictures. I'm not talking about drawings, I'm talking about pictures. So it's quite fascinating for a little
Yeah.
boy,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
especially
So,
he saw UFO before.
well, right. So then you see a UFO. You're about 13 or so. We chatted about this earlier, yesterday for
Right.
me, and you said to me that your sisters don't remember the sighting.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So that I
And
just think that's interesting because a
yeah,
lot of yeah.
after I get this work, and I interview a lot of contactees, a lot of people who saw UFOs. They believe they saw UFOs. Okay, and then I was thinking, wait a minute, I got my own cases, and I should have do interview to all of my witness, no, and I decided to do it, and I go talk to my sisters, and both of my sisters, they both have almost no memory at all. Almost. Okay, well,
Almost.
one of them. I mean, they both. We grew up together, and we were very close. We talked a lot of things. We always remember a lot of things happened when we were kids. Almost
Even
everything.
around that time, they remember things.
Yeah, and not only around that time, even now, we
Yeah.
remember a lot of details of our childhoods
Yeah.
because we all grew up together. I'm older than them, 2 years older than them, so we were very close friends, and we talked almost everything, and we were very good friends. So we always try to remember a lot of our childhoods,
And they
and
were
almost
still
every year.
they were old enough to remember this. If you were 13, they would have been 11 or 10. That's
Sure.
definitely old enough, but they just don't remember
Yeah.
this.
They saw it. I remember they saw it, and they feel scared too. And I talked to both of them separately,
Mm-hmm.
and one of them completely no memory at all. One of
Wow.
them,
Wow.
and the other one, I asked him, "Do you remember we saw UFO when we were kids on the rooftop of the building?" And the other one is kind of like, I I remember we saw something, but she doesn't
Wow.
remember what we saw, but just something. To remember the atmosphere, we were suddenly so afraid, and we want to leave, and but she forgot about the details, and she don't even remember that the golden ball and all those things.
It's so interesting because we find this really frequently with UFO sightings, where you'll have multiple witnesses of an event and it affects people differently. And there are people who will have something really dramatic happen, and it's like their memory just puts it away for months or years at a time. And then suddenly one day the memory will come back in this flash and they'll remember it. But it's a very odd thing, and we're seeing it happen with your family. But so we're almost at time for a quick break, Chuck. When we come back, I'll be really interested in asking how you developed this interest in UFOs and what it's like studying UFOs in Hong Kong. So why don't we take a quick break? I've got my little stopwatch here on my phone, and
Right.
we'll take a quick break and be right back.
Sure.
And I'll remind listeners who are listening, I'm Richard Dolan here with Cheuk Fei of MJ13 Radio Show in Hong Kong, and you're listening to KGRA Radio. We'll be right back. We're back. I'm Richard Dolan here with Cheuk Fei of MJ13 Radio, and so that was a really interesting segment. And well, can we just continue then, Chuck? So you do this radio program now in Hong Kong. How long have you been doing this?
I think I've been doing this like 8 years now.
Oh, wow.
8 years. Yeah.
Yeah, a long time.
I started my program in 2010. Yes, 8 years already.
Yes. I've got your website right here on my computer. It's just so people can know, it's www.mj13show.com.
That's right.
So it's mostly in Chinese. But there's you have a link for your Facebook MJ13 official forum.
Right.
Is that in Chinese or is that English?
Yeah, also Chinese.
Yeah.
It's mainly in Chinese.
Sure, right.
99% of my audience are Chinese.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's actually really good because everything else is in English. So let's have some UFO stuff for China. And then you have a Facebook page, Cheuk Fei's page, and these are linked on here. So it looks like people can just listen live when you do your program.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, when I have my program on Monday and Friday, which is your Monday morning and Friday morning, I have my program live on.
And you have a
I
phone.
can see live on Facebook.
You have a phone-in hotline. So do people call your show a lot?
It really depends. Hong Kong people, kind of the culture different. You can't expect people calling in like coast to coast every minute.
What
people don't have.
What is different about Hong Kong?
Sorry?
What is? Yeah, I interrupted you. I'm sorry. What is different about Hong Kong?
Oh, the Hong Kong people, they mainly still do put it this way. They still put the UFO subjects as entertainment or gossip.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really like. Not many people put it seriously. Put it this way. Even now, even up to now, people when people introduce me to the other person, say this guy who do UFO show, who talks about UFO, who do UFO research,
right?
And people start to. They give you kind of the expression which is they were totally blank. they don't know how to respond. They don't, if you introduce yourself like a stock market or stocker, the people
right.
talk to you about the financing. You're talking about UFO. They simply don't know how to respond, and then usually. Then okay, this kind of relation will end this way.
Well,
but that's the way it is.
In the States, especially when I was starting with UFO research a little over 20 years ago, I felt that I got a lot of that too. So it's not just Hong Kong. But for me, I just got to a point where I just stopped caring what other people would say. And maybe you're at that point too in Hong Kong. I have a feeling just by being who you are and meeting more and more people in your city, in your culture, and just as they get to know you, you're probably helping to change the culture in Hong Kong.
That's right. What I experienced changed my thought to. Before I was pretty care about this kind of reaction, but one case changed my thought is. I remember I've been introduced to the other guy. One of the guy, I remember he's a gang member, with tattoo everywhere, with the face expression. He's gonna kill you anytime.
This is in Hong Kong.
Kind of, in a gang, a trial, a big boss, and this guy introduced me as this guy is a UFO researcher, and he laughed like like, you're kidding me, that kind of laugh. And after he laughed, he pulled me aside and said, I got to tell you something. and then we become friends.
Hey, that's good.
Yeah,
it's like right out of a movie script.
Like movie script. But I got to tell you something, and then we become friends. And then he told me one of the cases, it's probably a contact case, but we're too busy to follow up. But anyway, we have a lot of cases like this, but people are so afraid to talk about it because they believe when they talk about it, they're gonna lose their job. They're going to lose their reputation. They're going to lose their friends. And people think they're going to think he's crazy or she's crazy. And I have people telling me story, but they beg me not to open up or not to tell the name.
Yeah.
They said, you can share the story on your program, but you cannot tell my name. I have a lot of cases like this. So I believe in the culture of Hong Kong, a lot of people have cases, have sighting, even have contact. I have one case who I've been studying a case like 5 years, and this lady is an abductee, and she was like couch potatoes on TV, and she suddenly changed to a completely different person after the contact. Yeah, so I believe the culture is like this. People are still afraid to talk about.
I definitely want to ask about a lot of these cases that you're investigating. Before we get into that, can you explain a little bit about Hong Kong and how it's so different than the rest of China? Because I mean, some people in the West are aware of this, but there may be a lot of people in the West who are not really fully aware, that Hong Kong was not even part of the Chinese government until I think it was 1997, when the United Kingdom, when Britain formally gave up control over it, which they had for centuries. So it created a different culture. Like Hong Kong is really different from the rest of China. How can you describe some of that for listeners?
Mm-hmm. Okay. First of all, whatever I'm gonna say is only represent by myself. It's not represent to any UFO research, any society. It's only to myself. I am just a radio host myself. So, okay, I would describe the culture itself. We were so different because even before 1997, Hong Kong culture is very unique. It combined the culture with British, and also combined the culture with Southern Chinese. We quite a lot of Hong Kong people come from the south area, like Guangdong, Guangzhou area, to Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a culture mixture, and it becomes a very unique culture. We speak English. Most of the Hong Kong people, quite a lot of Hong Kong people speak English, and we were well educated, and we aware of the whole world, what's happening in the whole world. It was like this back then, before 1997. And before 1997, we were thinking Chinese people is kind of it's not up to the international standard. That's what we think. That's what we thought. Right. And after the handover, and after all these years, now it's already 2018, and all this year, the culture is kind of mixture between the traditional Chinese to the old Chinese, the old Hong Kong people, kind of mixture. Yeah. So it make it even more complicated.
Sure.
But we're running in different system. We were not running. I mean, basically, the system is pretty much still the same as 97, before 97, before the handover. It's pretty much the same, but the only thing is on the politic wise, they report to the China government instead of report to the British, the Hong Kong British government. I put it this way.
Well, so, are there differences in internet? Is there differences in YouTube policy, Skype policy? Yeah, I thought so. So how is that all different?
The difference, we cannot get onto Google's, we cannot access YouTube or Facebook in mainland China, but we
Yeah.
can do it in Hong Kong here.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
a
we pretty
huge
much can
difference.
we can go almost everywhere on the internet in Hong Kong. We can access to like I mean just like in the States. I mean
Yeah.
not much censorship in here. We can even get to the dark web, the deep web, and do research. So it's pretty easy in Hong Kong here. But in China, there are quite a few website was blocked.
Yeah, very
You can
interesting.
we cannot use WhatsApp there. We cannot access YouTube. We cannot access Google, something like that. Facebook.
I
And
realize there are Chinese versions of those types of programs, but they're not connected to the rest of the world, I guess.
that's right. We
Yeah.
yeah. Jimmy Church used to say you guys have a Chinese version of everything. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
we have Chinese version of eBay like Taobao. We have Chinese version of a lot of things,
Well, I
but
think it's like,
they're not really like YouTube, Chinese version of YouTube, and quite a few of them, but they're not really connected to the outside because I think probably because of the language and for English countries when people get in there, you're watching Chinese wording without translation. That's hard. I think that's also the other reason why the UFO information is so difficult to pass to the
mhm.
outside world.
Well, people talk about the Great Firewall of China. The Great Wall, now the Great Firewall. And I mean, we could talk about this all day. Seems to me it's mostly political, even more than linguistic, because here you're in Hong Kong and we're doing this and we're getting along just fine. But I was
I
just
think
curious.
I think the firewall. I can say a little bit about the firewall. A firewall is quite mainly block the information to come in to
Right,
China.
right, right.
But instead of outside China, the people. I mean, a lot of companies from outside the other countries can easily access to China website. But when you're in China, if you want to do some search on Google's, that is impossible.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So they're fenced in, but not Hong Kong, and so that's one really important thing about why we're able to do this. Um, So you've got your radio program. You've done that now for 8 years, and in that time, it seems like you've gotten a lot of cases. One last thing I'm just curious about before we get into the cases. I'm sure listeners really want to hear about this, but what is the Chinese UFO culture like, or at least the Hong Kong?
Ah,
So are there Hong Kong UFO groups that are doing investigations? Are you the only one in Hong Kong? Are there other people? And do you know? Can you speak much about the Chinese UFO culture as well? I'm just curious about all of that.
okay. I will describe a little about Hong Kong and then carry on with Chinese. We are quite different. Even the culture is quite different. In Hong Kong, as I said, Hong Kong is like a big city. You can imagine a big city in New York or in Los Angeles. Nobody really talks about UFO unless you saw one.
Right,
People
right.
talks about the stock market. People talk about the financial, talk about the politics, and that is all. And it's quite Hong Kong is quite a materials world. Not many people spend time talk about UFO unless a few cases happen in uh, 80s. During 80s, there's a big, huge mothership stop on the top of an apartment, and more than 100 citizens saw it. And it's not only once, but twice.
Do you
We
know
can get
what?
into that if you're interested.
Oh, I definitely. What year was that? I definitely want to learn more about that.
We have a few. We have few times. That was one time is 1978, 1980, and 1985. Three times,
Wow.
but they are all three huge, big ones. And it one time it appeared You're gonna understand that I'm talking about the buildings. I'm talking about the apartment is like a really tiny, like 400 square feet for a whole family. That kind of small, crowded apartment.
Oh yeah.
And all the apartments are all built on four sides. Okay, and in the middle of the apartment is like an open area, like a patio that people all
Oh,
get together,
patio.
crowd together, and then talk and about gossip things. And the patio can look up into the skies.
Yeah.
That UFO, that mothership itself, can cover the whole apartment itself. So you can imagine, it's like a huge one. The huge one. I'm talking about like pretty much the poster of Independence Day. Remember the poster of
Oh yeah.
Independence Day? It's a big mothership, and down there is a tiny little White House. I mean, I'm talking about
Unbelievable.
that kind of size. Um, Not only one person saw it, like hundred of citizens saw it, and they all reported. And this is the first official UFO report in Hong Kong, and with a mass,
And
multiple witness.
this was 1978 then, the first one?
The first one 78, and then the second one is 80,
Yeah.
and the 71, the 78, the one that happens on 1978, it happens at around 7 p.m., which is everybody is about to sleep. No, everybody is about to get off from work. So it was crowded on the street. And on that building itself, we name it Wafu Estate. It's a crowded estate area, and under the building there's a bus terminal. So you can imagine around 7 o'clock, 7:30 o'clock, 7:30 at the evening. So you can imagine the full crowd of people on the street.
You're
So
saying
many
everyone
people
was,
saw it.
people were getting ready to go to work? I would have thought it was the morning,
No,
the way you
no,
describe
no,
it.
no, not morning. People get off from work.
Oh, get off. So sorry. Yeah, yeah. Get off
Get
from.
off from work, and then there's a bus terminal down there. So you can imagine when people get off the bus, thousands of hundreds of people walking on the street, and that UFO itself, it was like uh, it's like a dish shape. At first, people saw it as a whole black shadow. So nobody knows what that is. Nobody know what that was until it start blinking the lights all around the circle. And the people report they saw golden light, they saw white lights, and they're all turning around, turning on the rim of the UFO itself. And then it was silent, totally silent. And then it flowed to the other side, to float to the north side. Put it this way, put to north side and disappear on the horizon of the ocean area. Uh, quite a few witnesses.
Do you
This is
know the.
the first time, and then the second
Well,
time.
hold on. So, do you know the
Sure.
date of that first one? You said it was 78, but do you know the month or the day?
We only know about the years,
The years.
and
Okay.
we only know about it, I mean, the date has never been confirmed, but it seems like something around the Mid Autumn Festival. I mean, it was something like September or August or September,
Okay.
but we never really get the exact date
Hmm.
because they saw it and then they reported, and then and it seems like they reported to one of the government department. It's nothing about military. It's only an
Well,
apartment for observe the weather.
there must be a way to
Okay.
research that date, but
Yeah,
it's still
but
quite interesting for
no
sure.
way we can find out the date. But it's about 1978,
Okay.
and then the other time it comes back again, but at the midnight there was 1980s. Should be 1980s, and a kid living in the same apartment, and he was sleeping at night, and suddenly the ground is shaking. At first, he thought it's an earthquake, and he reported like a little decoration and the things that hang on the wall, they all fell down. So he thought that's an earthquake, and he ran to the kitchen. And when you're aware this kind of building, this kind of apartment, when you're in the kitchen, you can see the other kitchen on the other opposite side of the other people who live on the opposite side. So he saw people are watching, climbing half of their body outside of the window and look up to the sky. So he doesn't know why. So he ran out to the outside area of the building, which is some area on the stairway, the stairway, they can look up open area or look up to the sky. So he looked up, he saw the same huge mothership, also black at first, like a big, huge black shadow on the top of the building. And the building itself is shaking. And he remember he saw quite a few people on the opposite side of the building. They all look up to the rooftop of his own building. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's quite a few buildings up there, and people on the other side, they're looking up at the building of himself. So he looked up, and he saw people yelling, some people screaming like, "Oh, he's coming!" Some kind of like this. But I will try to explain a little this kind of screaming. It was like people who is very superstitious, and they believe the world's about to end. That kind of screaming. Okay, the meaning like this.
Yeah, total panic.
Panic, and they believe it's the world's about to end. That kind of panic, and also the contents of the wording. So, and all of a sudden, remember this UFO thing is all a black shadow. They can only see a black big circle on the sky, but they don't know what that was. And all of a sudden, the lights blinks, and the lights start turning. They know then they can see is the same ship that appeared in 1978 with the golden lights and white lights also around.
So are the lights moving, or are they stationary? What were they?
The lights moving.
And it was like a roundish disc type of object then?
At first it's a round disc. And then after that, at the bottom of the disc also have a lot of lights. I mean, I remember I interviewed one of the witness, one of the ladies, her name's Anita, and she said this was like thousands of light bulbs.
Wow.
Thousands of light bulbs. And
wow.
It turns on all together. It was like amazing. And when it turns on, then you can hear in the open area, people are screaming. That kind of describes.
It's just something else I'm noticing, because I'm familiar with so many UFO reports from the U.S. particularly. And sometimes I talk about the fear factor response. You remember the TV show Fear Factor? Well, I think there's times when people will have these encounters, and one of the reactions is total, absolute panic. So that's one, where people just lose it. They just lose it. I know one case of a husband and wife. They were driving home from work. They both saw this object. He's driving, and he just stopped the car to look at this thing. And the only time in their lives, in their marriage, where she was physically attacking him, pounding him, punching him, screaming at him to drive and to get out of there. And he was, on his side of it, he was almost like hypnotized. And that's another reaction that people have. Like, you'll have this intense emotional panic, and then you'll also have this very bizarre, calm, almost hypnotic experience. And they're both part of this. And you know what you're describing, this is, again, on the other side of the world decades ago, and yet people really respond to this very similarly throughout the world, as you're describing here.
Very similar.
Yeah.
And don't forget, in those days, even though I can get those UFO books from my brother, but UFO topics are still like a joke to most of the people in Hong Kong.
Yeah. Very
So
interesting.
you can imagine. And after all these years, we have one of the TV program which is owned by government, and they also do research of these UFO cases as well. And they went there and do document everything. And all those people back then, people who still live there, and they saw it, they all open up their door and tell the stories.
Well,
It's pretty much.
Hong Kong's
Sorry,
in a
go
good
ahead.
position. Well, I'm just saying Hong Kong's in a good position in a way because there's ridicule about UFOs there, just as there's ridicule about UFOs almost everywhere you go. I mean, even here, we've had in the U.S., we had the New York Times a couple of, like almost a year ago, come out with its articles on UFOs. But there's still a great deal of cultural conservatism and ridicule about UFOs, even to this day. It's everywhere you go. But in Hong Kong, the one good thing that you guys have going for you is you have enough of a free culture, I think, where people like you and others can talk about this. And I think slowly you can change the culture. At least I think so. There's opportunities to write good books on UFOs in Hong Kong, I would think. And then the radio show, what you're doing. And so I just think, as long as there are good researchers who are willing to get good information out to the people, I think there's a very good chance that ultimately there will be some changes made in the Hong Kong culture. And then that, at some point, can seep its way into the rest of China, for all I know.
Yeah, and because after these watchful estate cases, and not about only me, but a lot of the other pioneer people who talk about UFO in radio station in Hong Kong, TV station in Hong Kong, like what I mentioned, another channel from the government. They also report about UFOs in Hong Kong, and occasionally we have cases that get onto the news that people saw sighting like a couple of years ago. Quite a lot of sightings in Hong Kong, but sometimes from time to time, we have cases appear on the news. So in Hong Kong area, especially these couple of years, people more open to the UFO cases, and more people. When I'm walking on the street, people sometimes will come up and talk to me. I'm gonna tell you about my story. I'm gonna tell you about my sighting. So it's more and more open up.
It is changing. It is changing, and you're one of the reasons it's changing. I think you and other good researchers and voices. We're going to take a quick break, Cheuk.
Sure.
Really enjoying this, and when we come back, how about we get into some of the cases that you've been investigating? You told us about some of the interesting ones already, but I'm sure there's more. And I definitely want to still hear more about UFO research and the activity that's going on. But how about we take a very quick one, and we'll come right back after this. I'm Richard Dolan here with Cheuk Fei. Cheuk's website, by the way, is mj13show.com. It's his radio show. Do you do that daily, weekly? How often do you do that show?
I do that on Monday and Friday.
Okay.
Monday is an audio version, and Friday is with with video. Sometimes I interviewed, my guests. They have pictures. They have some materials to show. They all show up on Friday.
Yeah.
And I have another show with all three of my friends. All the other three persons are very funny. One of them is a tarot reader, and he also is a scientist. A scientist who study tarot cards.
Oh,
and I have another friend who is a lady, is a psychic who she can actually go to the hell and to fix things, that kind of crazy stuff. And I have another good friend of mine, who study conspiracy theory of music. Anyway, all three of us have another program on Wednesday. So it's kind of fun. And we're trying to bring as many as unexplained topics to my audience.
Yeah, fantastic. Fantastic. Well, I'm Richard Dolan here with Cheuk Fei. This is KGRA Radio. We'll be right back. I'm Richard Dolan, back with Cheuk Fei of Hong Kong's UFO community. Well, he is from Hong Kong, and Chuck's website is mj13show.com. That's his radio show, which, Chuck, you said you do that Mondays and Fridays or Tuesdays and Fridays? Am I getting mixed up? No,
Monday and Friday.
Monday and
Monday and
Friday.
Friday.
Good. Whew. I'm really enjoying this. I'm having a great time talking with you about UFO phenomenon research in Hong Kong and
Thank
China.
you.
You wanted to pick it up on Chinese UFO culture, I believe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Hong Kong side, they were more like entertainment. Like I said,
Yeah.
They want to listen to those stories. But in China, the research, the culture is totally different. It's quite serious. In fact, they were quite serious on the UFO research. Okay. I say that because I'm not represent to any UFO research society, not in Hong Kong, not in China. But I just tell what I know. Because of my work, I have a lot of chances to communicate with some UFO research society in Hong Kong and China. And as far as I know, in China, the Chinese people are quite open to UFO and alien subjects. Very open. You can find translated books in any Chinese bookstores talks about UFOs and UFO cultures. We can find translated books from I think quite a few famous author. You can find books from there, and you can find it in China bookshop. Of course, they translate in the simplified Chinese, and I never really go up to list to read those books, but I know those are translated book from some English version, and it's pretty open up, and the government never really stopped the citizen from studying, talk about UFO at all.
Yeah.
That is what I know.
I get the same impression, actually, with China. After the death of Mao in 1976, particularly, I get a strong feeling that the Chinese government was really allowed for a lot of openness on the UFO subject. This is during the Deng Xiaoping years. And we talked in our previous interview. I was mentioning the research of a Chinese researcher named Paul Dong, who I think moved to the United States, but was very involved in Chinese cultural UFO research. And he pulled out, this is in the 1980s, a lot of Chinese cases. And I know one story, I wonder if you've heard this. There was a United States senator named Claiborne Pell of Rhode Island for many years. He's no longer alive. But Claiborne Pell was very interested in UFOs, deeply interested. And on one occasion, he had one of his aides go to China. This is in the 1990s. And his aide was named C.B. Scott Jones. Scott Jones is still alive.
Yeah.
And so Scott Jones met with a lot of high-level Chinese UFO researchers. These are people with PhDs and very significant government connections. And apparently Jones was very impressed by the quality of UFO research there. And at one point he said to them, this is like 1993 or 94, I believe. He said, why, you guys have all the information you need. Why don't you simply come out with the reality of this phenomenon? And according to what they said to him, we're waiting for the United States. When the United States reveals this information, China will be a close second. I think that's what he said, that they told him. So I think that's a true story, and that was in the early 90s. I mean, China's a totally different country now than it was 20, 25 years ago. So I just wonder where Chinese UFO research has gone in the last 25 years.
Okay. I want to answer. I want to give a little comment about what you just mentioned about we're gonna wait for China government gonna wait for the United States to when they stand up and say, and then China government gonna goes to the second.
Yeah.
And this is probably true because I from another source, from another, uh, another source from another um, people I know, one of my friends, they told the same thing. They told the same thing. We have China government have retrieval, have UFO retrieval. I believe they have some of the technology as well. So so what the commander CB Scott Jones mentioned, that's probably true because I heard the same thing anyway. Um, but the culture is quite serious. People are quite serious on studying because all those people who do the study in China, we are talking about the PhD, professor from university, and they're all involved into this. And they're not only studying about UFO, they quite combine the UFO study together with technology. So we have magazine like UFO magazine from China, from mainland China, every month for the past 30 years, 50 years. And have UFO magazine reporting the cases from the other side of the world, from the other countries, and also studying the technology and science in the same magazine.
Are
Uh,
there many Chinese cases reported in this magazine? I would think so,
uh,
right?
the sometimes they well no seriously don't magazine because those magazines are for Chinese. So mainly they reporting the cases from uh, the other countries.
Aha.
But occasionally they have the China case. They will put it in there. They will put it inside there. Okay, so the government never really stopped the citizen from studying. And now I'm talking about now you have the magazine. China have a lot of UFO research society almost everywhere in China. All little small town, they have a UFO research society. No, okay, you don't expect they are very modern. Even in some remote area, they still have a research center because I believe quite a lot of people saw UFO in China, but they just don't have an a chance, or they don't have some kind of system like MOVE-ON or what you mentioned on the earliest on the other interview, the UFO Research Center.
Oh,
We don't have that kind of
like the
we don't have that
National
kind of
UFO,
system.
yeah, the National UFO Reporting
National
Center.
UFO Research Center,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
and MOVE-ON. We don't have that kind of system in here, not even in Hong Kong, not in China. So they have many different groups to do their studying. But the thing is, don't forget, I keep on telling people, this is a communist country. You
Right.
cannot simply just form a society group more than 50 persons. That will against the law of the national security. You cannot just form a
So
group.
the limit is 50 people.
Yes, as far as I know right now,
And
yes.
so are all of these Chinese UFO groups less than 50 people each, or do they?
That is not the point. That is not the point. The point is they all have the approval from the government. We
Right.
have the UFO magazine. This is a communist country. You cannot just print a magazine
Right.
and sell it outside the market. You have to get approval from government.
And they have
So
it.
basically, yes. And so basically, the government is approved the citizen of China to do study of UFO research.
That's a really important point, isn't it? That's really important that you have the
That's
Chinese, the powerful Chinese government, right?
yeah.
Uh, approving
But
and,
of
and
course,
almost
at the same
promoting.
time, China. Yeah, but of course, at the same time, I believe China government they have their own study research, of course, but they are not going to share it with us, with the
No,
citizen.
sure.
They keep their research. They keep their research, but they never stop you from doing research. They don't have any agenda to make UFO a foolish subject. No,
A couple of
nothing
things
like
are
that.
coming to mind. One, a number of years ago, I had a conversation with a Chinese man who was talking about the possibility of getting one or more of my books into the Chinese market. And to my knowledge, I don't know if I have anything over there. Maybe it's possible. One of the publishers that I have for my first book, and maybe for After Disclosure, I actually don't know. But the point was, he said the Chinese government doesn't have a problem with UFOs per se, but they would be careful about political conspiracy types of writing that may go along with it. That would be the big objection that they might have. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, that sounds correct to me as far as I know.
Yeah.
We can talk about UFOs. I actually goes up to Guangzhou area and be a host and talks about UFOs for a whole 2 years summer. And that radio station itself is a government-owned radio, and I
So
can, as a
can
guest,
you
and talk about UFO
can you
in
talk about
summertime.
what the Chinese government knows about UFOs on Chinese radio? So can you speculate on crash retrieval cases, or can you talk about is the Chinese military studying technology, this type of thing? How far can someone go in China in talking about this?
Yeah, if you talk about UFO, as long as you don't touch the politics, and you're fine.
Yeah,
As long
I
as you
don't know
don't
what that
touch the
means.
politics.
what,
You
what
know, you
what
don't
does that
you don't
mean?
touch the. When you talk about the cases, I mean, put it this way: you can talk. This is funny when we talk to our subjects in the radio and the broadcast in China, we cannot talk about ghost stories because those are superstitious. We cannot talk
Yeah,
about religion. We cannot talk about religion.
this
We
is
cannot talk about politics.
right.
Okay,
So
especially
remember,
the politics.
do you know about the Falun Gong?
Yeah,
So they're a religion, a cult, depending on how you look at them. And from the things that I've learned about them, they're persecuted in China. They have beliefs that are very odd. They're very unusual beliefs, but they're very connected to the UFO subject. Like they believe, I'm trying to remember this correctly, that there are people who are kind of inhabited by extraterrestrial entities.
yeah, yeah.
And I think there's a lot more to this, but they get
They ban
arrested.
it. They ban it, and they
Yeah,
treat it as a cult. Yeah, that was because in the China, from the government, from the report of the news, they said the Falun Gong um, they wrap is a put it this way is a society wrapped up by religion, but inside is a political religion try to against the communists.
oh yeah,
That's sort of the idea. That's why in China they ban the Falun Gong, but in Hong Kong it's open.
I see.
So sometimes when we're walking on the street in Hong Kong, okay, I try not to talk too much about politics, but in Hong Kong we can see something really weird. On the one side, in a very commercial, crowded walking area, on one side of the road, we have a booth of Falun Gong and with the flags and
Yeah,
people give away the flyers.
I think they're
On the
everywhere.
other side of the road, there's another community, another society that against the Falun Gong. They give away flyers, so you can get flyers at the same time on both sides. And one of the side they talk about the spiritual and all those, and the other side they talk about politics and trying to, you know, to flip away the government. That kind of things. It's
Yeah.
so funny.
Two
In
years
Hong
ago,
Kong, can happen in Hong Kong.
I was in Toronto with Tracy 2 years ago, and we're walking down a street, and there was a Chinese woman, I believe, giving out information. It was all about the Falun Gong in Toronto, in Canada. And I thought, wow, they are everywhere. So, well, that's interesting. So I'm really very interested in what you said about the Chinese government and how they are tacitly promoting or allowing UFO research to take place in China. And I wonder if China, in that sense, I mean, despite the fact that it's so many ways a closed society and communist ideology, but in this sense, in terms of UFO study, it might just be the most, it might have the most open culture on studying UFOs of any place. It's quite possible.
Yeah, it was because they treated it as a science subjects, a science technology subject. So of course, it's got nothing to do with religion and superstition. So they open up and allow people to do the study.
Wouldn't it be?
The reason I said that,
Yeah.
that the reason I can prove it, because there are a few very famous abduction cases in China, and one of the cases was studied by the Beijing UFO Research Society, and that is the main big boss of the Society of UFO Research in China, because that is in Beijing. And one of the officer who goes out and do the research himself, he go up and met with the abductees and do the research and do a lot of body checking. And this abductees saw another young Chinese girls in the craft. And these researchers go and met him and go to find these girls. And they all have those, those drawing. When you saw a criminal, you go to the police department, they're going to give you a drawing.
Yeah.
They do all those drawing and try to find these girls. But the reason I said the government allowed is because when the researchers do the research, all this body checking, all these lie detecting machines and all this drawing, they're all done by the government department, like the military hospital, like the police department, like and a high-rank government hospital. They're all involved into the research. So you can imagine how, if you're a normal person without the support of the government, how can you move them and ask them to help you do the drawing for?
So you're saying
the girl you met in the UFO said, how can you get the police department to do it without the government's help?
The government's always involved then. So you're saying in every significant UFO case that's investigated, the Chinese government is basically, they're on top of it, or they're extracting whatever information they want. Is that what you're saying? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, I kind of I know they study the case very seriously, and the reports goes up to the China government, of course. But I don't know whether they do any more research after it.
Yeah.
Or
do they just collect? Maybe they just collect the
cases. If they decided to close it and to not everybody knows, I mean, that would just like KGB. There's no way you can find it out if they decided not to let you know.
But what you're saying, I think, is the Chinese government is doing a lot of collection of UFO data from the public. So when there's a UFO case or an abduction case, the Chinese government is finding a way to get that data from the public. That's what it sounds like you're saying. So that's very interesting. That's something very, very new. And I don't know if that's happening to the same degree in other countries, even the United States. I'm not sure. There's definitely surveillance of UFO organizations that we do pretty sure happens within the U.S. Intelligence officers will attend UFO conferences in the U.S. That's, I think, been very well understood for a long time. So they've got their finger on the pulse of the situation. But what you're describing is much more.
Besides of the government support or besides of the culture, the culture itself of Chinese, because we believe, I mean, people talking all around the world, Asian Chinese, they invent a lot of things like the publishing, like the herbs and all that. We all believe all these skills are all taught by another beings, and they are not human. And we all, probably you heard, most of the Chinese, they believe our ancestor are dragon. So that is the reason why Chinese and dragon is so related together, because Chinese people believe our ancestor are from the sky, a dragon. So it's very easy to mix with the UFO culture into the modern day, because all these years, Chinese people believe some kind of connection between Chinese people and the people from the sky.
Cheuk, that's just amazing. I realized we should talk about some other Chinese UFO cases recently, because you made me realize there was one a photograph from like 5-6 years ago that a Chinese man took with his cell phone camera of what looked like a dragon structure in the sky. I don't know if you remember this, but I remember it. But it just gets me thinking, like, what is going on today? Oh, and so that's China. Can you talk a little bit before we're going to take a break in about four minutes, and then we'll have one more segment to go.
Sure.
What's Hong Kong? Not China, but what's Hong Kong UFO research like these days? I mean, you've got your show. Are there any other UFO groups in Hong Kong? You said the culture's different, so there's more ridicule. But still, are there groups in Hong Kong that are actively researching UFOs?
Yeah, we have one of the local UFO research groups named UFO Hong Kong UFO Club. And they do research quite seriously, because quite a lot of them, our founder, one of the founder, I'm not belongs to any of them, but the founder of the Hong Kong UFO Club, who is a lady who traveled to the state and do a lot of research for a lot of years, and she was the founder, and the UFO culture pretty much start from there, and pretty much they start from 1985, I guess, if I remember wrong. So the UFO culture is actually built up at around 80s or 70s or 80s.
Okay.
In Hong Kong culture, and we have exopolitics in Hong Kong. Yeah, we have the founders named Neil Glue, and he's from South Africa, and he's quite active in the UFO field. He's a very good friend of C.B. Scott Jones and Paula Harris.
I see.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So we have these two research in here, and we have another research society. Is another name. But they don't want me to open up the name. But they only study about technology of UFO, and they pretty much a closed research community, not open for a public.
Okay.
So yeah, and a few UFO programs in Hong Kong. And talk about UFO, spiritual, and conspiracy stuff in the internet on the internet radio program. It's quite open up in Hong Kong here.
Well, what you're saying to me, I think, what you're saying to viewers is that really Hong Kong and China, in their own ways, are what's going on there in a lot of ways is very similar to what's happening in every other part of the world. There are definite differences, particularly, I think, with China, but in China and certainly in Hong Kong, it's very encouraging. Maybe the culture is not that open to it in Hong Kong, but that doesn't make it different from a lot of other parts of the world, to be honest with you. But there are definite people researching it. And I wonder if when we come back after the break, because I'm just looking at the clock here, we've got about a minute or less, if we can discuss some interesting Hong Kong UFO cases that you've looked into or that you know about, just to give people a taste of what's happening over there. How does that sound when we come back?
Sure, no problem.
Well, I'm looking at my clock. We're basically done here. So why don't we take the break now? I'm Richard
Sure.
Dolan here with Cheuk Fei, whose radio show MJ13 is in Hong Kong, and he does that show twice a week. Go to his website mj13show.com, and I think that, and there are browsers that can translate from Chinese to English anyway, so it's not impossible to work your way through it if you're not a Chinese speaker. Chuck, it's been fun. Hang on, we're going to have one more segment to go. We'll be right back. We're back. I'm Richard Dolan here with Cheuk Fei of MJ13 Radio Show. And if you want to learn more about him or listen to him, he does 2 shows a week out of Hong Kong. It's mj13show.com. Chuck, welcome back. And we were going to, I'm so glad you're here. I love learning about what's happening in Hong Kong and China in terms of the UFO phenomenon. We were going to talk about some cases that you have been investigating, and I think that even includes abduction cases, if I'm not mistaken. Can we
Sure.
get into some of that?
Sure. I start my radio program in 2010, and after 2 years, I cover quite a lot of UFO stories. Sometimes audience call in and tell me stories, and they saw secret shape UFO in a downtown area, that kind of things. But I can never imagine an abduction case called in. During 2012, because everybody is so fascinating about the Maya calendar, about the end of the world. So that's the reason why people knows me. And I was writing a book. You can imagine, as people who have dyslexia, writing a book is really difficult. It's a disaster to me.
Oh.
So I try my best, with a lot of help with the technology, with the computer, the new software that can help me do the translation and the writing. But I don't know what to put in there in the subject. So I only put in a few cases that people share with me, the audience share with me. I put it in there, and I was quite blank, to be serious. But I am supposed to finish the book by July, but it was March back then, so I don't have enough time. And I was sitting, one of the afternoon, I was sitting in front of the computer like now, and I don't know what to put in the book, and I was blank in my mind. And suddenly I have received an email, and the email that activate one of my stupid device that will blink and say, "You got mail," and real loud, and that scared me. And that afternoon, and I opened up the email right away, and there was a lady. I just put her name is I cannot open up her name. So this lady who wrote me, and it was like she was described. She saw things the day before, and at night before, the night before, she saw some UFO blinking the light through the window to her room, and then she lost her memory completely, and then she wake up, and then she was so scared, and she tried to find her friends to help. She doesn't know me back then, and one of her friend told her, "Why don't you try to find this guy? This is a UFO guy in Hong Kong."
Okay.
And she find my Facebook and connect with me. So she sent me an email, and I wrote back the email to her. I said, "Why don't you leave me a number so I can call you back?" And as soon as I sent my email reply back to her, she came back and replied with a number in 30 seconds. So you can imagine she was in a desperate situation. She was sitting in front of the computer and wait for my reply. And as soon as she saw my reply with a number, so she typed in and sent back. So I called her right away. She cried immediately as soon as she heard my voice. And she was like, she saw the UFO, some red light blinking outside the building, outside her house, on the daytime, and then she come back at the night time, and then she lost her remember
So
of
there's
the whole night.
potentially some missing time. At least it sounds like it
Yeah,
might be.
it's a missing time. It's missing time in two times. She had missing time in the daytime, and then at night she lost completely.
Okay.
She lost her memory completely until the next day she get up,
And so
and she was so scared.
she's
And she,
very upset about this. This is very deeply
very
traumatizing for her, and she's coming to you for help. So how do you deal with this? What happens?
well. I mean, seriously, at the first time, I thought she was crazy. I thought that is too good to be true event, that too good to be true that happened to me, and I don't know how to deal with that seriously. And there's nobody who can tell me how to deal with a situation like this.
Right.
And I decided let's meet up, and I went back to the radio station, and I met with this lady, and I tried to get some clue whether she's crazy or she's trying to play some tricks. You never know what people are thinking.
No,
So
it's
I
true.
tried to talk to her, and after about a long, like 2 hours conversation, and I realized she's quite normal. She is a person without any stress of life, no stress of financial problem, no any. She doesn't smoke, she doesn't drink, she's not on drug. She's quite a normal person, seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And the time she usually spend is watching TV at home, and go watch a movie, hang out with friends and eat, and walk on the street. It's quite a pretty normal Hong Kong person.
Sounds like a pretty. I don't want to use a judgment here, but it's not an exciting life. Doesn't sound like she lives an exciting life. It sounds like she just lives a normal
To me,
day to day.
to me, it's a very boring life. I like to live life like Indiana Jones. So to me, I cannot accept that kind of life at all. So anyway, and after the conversation, but as soon as our subjects involve into her experience, and she becomes really upset. She cried, and you can see she's not faking it. She's not acting it. She's really
Right.
crying, and she's really worried. And her fiance also inside the room with us, and her fiance is also very worried. She doesn't know how. He doesn't even know how to help. So we don't know what to do. We just discuss, and I try to comfort her, but I know that's very difficult because I don't know what's the word to use to describe. She asked me, "Is that possible to stop this?" I said, I think nobody can tell you how to stop it. I don't know. Nobody can actually tell you to do. So it's pretty helpless situation.
Were you able to learn more about what's happening? Did she go through any kind of investigation, hypnotherapy, anything like this? Regression?
She has nothing. She know nothing at all about UFO, about alien abduction. She know nothing about it at all. She doesn't even watch science fiction movies. So that's the point. So I try to describe and try to let her understand what could be happening, or could be just some other misunderstanding from the other situation. I don't know, but I don't want to give a conclusion. But the only thing seems that can help is hypnotherapies. I find one of my good friends during my work. I find one of my good friends is a very conservative lady, but she's very spiritual. But she's never like a very high profile person. She's like a very low profile, but she study a lot of spirituals, and bring a lot of healers and spiritual person from the States to come to Hong Kong and do teaching. So I actually talked to this lady, and I told her, I think this is the case. I need your help because I need to find out what's actually happening to these ladies, because she was so upset. You can see she was so annoyed of the situation. She cannot sleep. She was so afraid to sleep because she was afraid when she sleep, and she will have this kind of experience again.
Well, just to jump in, I know people here in the United States who have it's the same thing. So men, women. I'm thinking of a man right off the top of my head who has a very difficult time sleeping. In fact,
Yeah,
several men, women as well, who have these ongoing experiences, and it completely destroys their ability to sleep normally.
yes,
So this woman you're meeting, it's very similar, very similar. So please go on.
yeah. And then I don't know what to do to help, and the only thing I can help is hypnosis. So I find this lady, and I try to tell this. I try to explain the situation to this my friend, the spiritual woman, and she decided, okay, as long as she's a hypnotherapy, so she can try to help, and try to ask questions during the hypnosis very carefully. You
Mm-hmm.
know, carefully in the sense we all know this kind of questions can be false suggestions to the person who been hypnosis. They
Right.
may plant a false memory into her. So we're doing it very carefully. We record the whole thing. We record the whole hypnosis process. Um, and she
Yes.
basically tried to find out what she go through for the first day. And she said the first time she saw there was something outside the building. It was a daytime. It was about 11:30. Because the reason you remember 11:30 is on the contents play on the TV. It was playing a very famous TV program, a drama program. So she remembered the time, and there's something shine inside the room. So she noticed the light source is from outside the window. So she walked up to the window and she looked outside. Outside the window is a mountain area, completely blank. No buildings, no house, no roads at all.
Okay.
Um, it's a countryside area. But there was she described a metal plate about as size as a truck, as size as a big truck. It was
So
hanging on the sky with no noise.
okay.
It's a plate. It's not craft. She said it's a plate. But on the corner of the plate has a red light and white lights. And the red lights and the white lights is very strong. And that can, when it blink, the lights can actually enter to the house she was living. So she was so worried. She doesn't know what that was, and hanging on the sky like a metal plate.
So just to
And
understand, so there is this plate-like object outside. The lights from that object were bright enough that it was coming into her apartment, and that's what got her
that's right.
attention. She looks out the window
That's
and
right.
she sees this. Okay.
Yeah. And then the red lights start blinking again, and she was kind of worried. So she was kind of like hiding on the side of the window, and just peed out and saw it, and then hide again, and then peed out again, and then they disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Just probably about 5 minutes. She was standing out next to the window about 5 minutes, and then this thing disappeared because she was hiding, and then just look out again, it's gone. It's gone. And then she was puzzling. She doesn't know what that was. And then she decided to go back to sit on the TV and watch the TV, and the program is no longer playing the program she was watching.
Aha.
The program was playing another program which is about 5 hours later. And she
Wow.
looked up to the watch, looked up to the clock, and they were about 3 or 4 hours gone. It's when she about to when she saw the
Now,
light. It was about 11:30.
did the hypnosis help recover what happened during that period of
Yeah,
time? So we've got
yeah,
about
because
10 minutes. Can you describe this in 10 minutes or less? I want to make sure we
sure,
get all
okay,
of this in.
sure. And then during the hypnosis, she realized she saw the lights and she saw that thing and blinked the light, and then she remembered she walked through the wall and the window and standing in the middle of the air. And she remembers she looked down, there was a road. She still remember a red taxi, a red cab just drive
So below
below her
her.
feet. But on the top of her head is and a UFO on the top of her head. And then the next thing she remembers, she was lying on the table all the time. She always have her dress on, never get naked. But there was a little metal boxes always pressed on her belly all the time. And she remembers being someone holding up her hand, and she remembers kind of like floating in the air. But during the real scenario in the video of her hypnosis, she raised up her hand for like more than 10 minutes until my friend think maybe that's too long. So she helped her to remove her hand and put her down. And but she remember all these events. She remember
Wait,
the
wait,
faces
wait.
of those people.
I just want to make sure. So during her hypnosis, she raised her arm or her hand. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
the hypnotist eventually, after like 10 minutes, made her move her arm back down. Did I
Yeah.
understand that?
Right. That's right. That's right. But at the same time, she was describing being holding her hand inside a craft and floating in the middle of the air.
How
When
interesting.
she dis- when she described it, she raised up her hand, and she never put her hand down until 10 minutes later.
That's amazing. So please go on. We want to hear more of this. We want to hear the rest of this.
Okay. So and that was the first hypnosis. And then after the first hypnosis, she realized that something happened during the missing time, but she somehow get a little clue about it got something to do with alien or the other beings because she saw their face. It's not like a human face. It's like a face with a lot of wrinkles, but they were shorts with rope, like a Jedi rope with the hope on the top, but the face is wrinkled and they were short like 4 feet tall. But
All
they
right.
don't have big eyes.
Wrinkled face, short, 4 feet tall, not large eyes, small eyes.
Small eyes, not a big eyes like the gray. They have mouths. They have tiny little holes on the nose, but not exactly a shape of nose. But the eyes is not. But they were short and with a lot of wrinkles on their face.
What color were they? Did she recall this?
I think you mentioned something like a brownish gray,
Brownish gray.
quite. We had a lot of cases that people describe the ETs. They are like biomechanism. They don't have emotion, but that's not the case. What she described. She described these beings have emotion. They will get angry. They will try to talk to her through telepath, and they don't hurt him. But at the same time, they have a lot of connection after the first.
I want to
You
make
believe
sure
that's the
I'm getting
connection.
this, Chuck. I'm getting a slightly poor connection at this moment. Everything else has been fine, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So she's describing um, they're telepathic, so they're communicating with her telepathically. And you mentioned emotions. Did you say that they got angry, or did I mishear that?
They got emotions when all these days, all these years when we talk. Sometimes she would describe they will get angry if they want her to do some things, and she for some reason she didn't do it, or for some reason she refused to do it, and
Right.
those beings will get not really angry, but they got unhappy, or they would have
Maybe
emotions.
like stern or a little
Yeah,
more difficult with her, perhaps. So they have some.
something.
They would show some emotions. They were telepathic. And there was one other thing that I think you were saying about these beings. What were they doing with her? What was the whole purpose of taking her? Do we know this?
Okay, at the first time, we know nothing at all about why they choose her and why they connect with her. But then after, I was writing a book. Remember, I was supposed to finish my book by July because of a book fair. So I told her, I said, I want to put a story in after a few months of contact. I told her, I want to put a story in my book because I only have one more month left. So I have to.
So let's
I
do it
want to
fast.
share. So just do it fast.
Yeah.
And then she told me, and that was already 5 months of contact. And she told me, no, that was about 3 months of contact. And then she told me, no, you won't be able to finish the book by July. I said, how do you know? And then she said, you will only finish your book by the middle of December of 2012. And I was thinking, uh, okay. I just hear it, and I just respond okay, and I forgot about the whole conversation. And she said, you won't be able to finish it. And then after some time, and the deadlines comes, and I really cannot finish the book before July, but I rushed to finish my book before November, the end of November, and then they send the book back to China, and they print it and do this lot of proofreading and all those things, and come back to the store by 15th of December. And I asked her, I said, how do you know the day of the publishing, the day that the book is out? She said, they told me. They told me the book will only finish and to sell to the bookstore by the middle of December. And that was the day. And then not only that, and then after a few times, after a few couple of years, and I actually bring a few tours to the States, to visit Area 51 and all those places. And she said, right before the people who apply, she said that there will be one people in your team. His name is start from don't remember. It start from a characters like an S.
Yeah.
And then he will be the one who will be the most skeptics one, and he will not believe you the whole tour until the end of it. And that everything happens. Everything happens. This guy is named Simon, and he's calculating, and he doesn't believe. He's very skeptical, and the whole tour he's so challenging about the UFOs and all that thing, Area 51 and all things. But by the time we come back to Hong Kong, and he become a completely believer.
This is we're almost done here, and I want to get the name of your book so I can read it and other people can read it. But this is
Okay.
the thing about this subject, Cheuk, is that there's the one element of it where we just want to study, record data, get everything down that we can, be as factual as we can. And then, wouldn't you know it, the longer you stay in this field, you run into a case where it gets really, really weird. Really weird. Like this woman, she's suddenly become a prophet psychic, and she's giving you apparently accurate predictions. I definitely want to learn more about this. We're just about out of time. The only other thing I want to know about her in the time we have left is, did she have any more detail about the nature of these visitations? Why was she taken? Do we know why? Does she know why?
She was taken, and then especially these days, she started telling a lot of messages. A lot of messages from what she called teachers. She called them teachers already. And all those messages are pretty much like, she start remember I told her originally she's a TV person.
Yeah.
But now she's dropped the TV, and now she always takes time to talk about the subjects. This is way more complicated to a TV person, like cosmophysics. She's talked about quantum physics, quantum entanglement, and which is something sometimes things I don't even understand. But the way she understands is she said, and she proved to me. Sometimes you just open up the computer. If she wants to get up to Facebook to chat with friends or to do some normal things, and the computer hangs up, and the browser will sometimes open up some subjects, which is, I mean, it's not relevant. It's some kind of subjects like quantum physics for her to read. So and she believes that it's not a consequence. She believes that it's all arranged.
No, this encounter really does seem to have completely woken her up, don't you think?
Yeah.
Just totally woken her up.
She's a completely new person.
That's amazing. Is she married now?
She's married. She's married to the same person. A lot of funny thing because in the middle of the investigation, her fiance, which is her husband right now, is too scared. Decided to leave. Because he was so afraid he would be abducted as well.
Well, I wondered if he
leave her for like 6 months, and then he decided, no, I just love this woman too much. She decided to come back to be her side.
Good.
So it's a lot of happening these few years.
Well, I was just wondering if he didn't like the changes she was going through. Sometimes, you're comfortable with the old way, right? And then suddenly she goes through this process and she's completely different. So it's good that he decided to stay with her because I think she's probably a lot more interesting now anyway. So look, we're just about done, but what is the name of your book and how can people out in the world here get it? Can I get it?
The book is published in 2012, but it's also in Chinese. So if some of your audience can read Chinese or decided to learn how to read Chinese, that is a good chance. My book's name is UFO File Plus, and that's the English name.
You're motivating me to learn.
I don't know whether you're able to find it.
I want to read your book.
Good. Thank you.
Cheuk Fei, it's been such a fun experience and an enlightening experience for me, and I have no doubt for everyone listening to hear what you have to say about the UFO phenomenon in Hong Kong, China, and the state of research. And I would personally love to have you back on for future interviews. If you're available, I think it would be really worthwhile. Great.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to share. There's a lot of Chinese UFO cases, abduction cases, UFO sighting. We have sighting just about last week, and it actually stopped the airport from working. So a lot of cases, a lot of sighting, and not only now, but back then, even in Qing Dynasty, we have a lot of sighting story I can share.
Well, China's an old country.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's a lot going on there. Well, Cheuk Fei of MJ13 Radio Show, I want to thank you so very much for appearing here on the Richard Dolan Show on KGRA. Have a great evening, because I know it's very late where you are. And
Thank you for having me on. Thank you.
It's been a great pleasure, Chuck. Have a wonderful evening, and thank everyone for listening. And with that, it's time to say goodnight. Thanks for listening. If you want to hear more follow-up conversation between Chuck and myself, you can go to richarddolanmembers.com, where we go into some interesting further details regarding his research in Hong Kong. And remember, while we learn and grow and search for the truth, let's be good to each other. Good night. Thanks for listening to The Richard Dolan Show. You can join me live most Mondays at KGRA Radio, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. To learn more about what I'm up to, visit richarddolanmembers.com, where you can read my latest articles or listen to my off-the-cuff thoughts on pretty much anything. Also, don't forget richarddolanpress.com, where I publish books by myself and some of the most interesting authors of our time. Catch you later.